Hello there. I'd like to share with you today a magazine I've got from Discovery Kids, and it's all about the Constitution. The Constitution of the United States. There's a story. It says here, I am known as the father of the Constitution. You know who that was? We know that George Washington was first in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen. And so he's known as the father of our country, but someone else was known as the father of the Constitution. And in this magazine, you will see about that. You will read about that and many other sundry things about our Constitution. What is the story behind how it got done? The supreme law of the land. Listen to this little snippet. What if there were no such thing as a president of a country? What if the government had no money to pay soldiers? What if every state had a different kind of money and you had to change money when you crossed a state border? All of this was true during the country's first year. The 13 states had loose ties under a document called the Articles of Confederation. But in general, each state did as it pleased. There was a Congress where each state had one vote, but there was no president to enforce decisions made by Congress, and there was no national courts. Congress could ask states for money to pay national debts, but it could not enforce or force the states to pay. And many states did not pay. And so you see that the Articles of Confederation, the first form of government that our country had, or the United States, at the beginning of its infancy, the Articles of Confederation were weak, though, at best, and there were problems with it. It was good for the ones that didn't want strong government, but was it strong enough to enforce laws? In 1787, many leaders feared that the new country would fall apart without a stronger central government. They called for a meeting of delegates from all the states. The goal was to make changes in the Articles of Confederation. But once the delegates gathered together, they realized that a bigger change was needed. They wrote a brand new document. It is called the Constitution. It is the supreme law of the land. So in the end, they realized that we just need to scrap it and start all over, pretty much. And so that is indeed what they did, you see. And then there's another page here that strikes me. Look at that page there. See that? This is their meeting to have the Constitutional Convention. And that met in Philadelphia on May 25th, 1787. Now, I'm recording this in the month of May, so it was about this time of year that they met in Philadelphia to revise these Articles of Confederation. And soon the delegates from 5 more states arrived. And this is what happened. I want to show you some of the states that arrived here. So let me take a look here in my magazine right here. And I'm going to just change the view so you can look right here. Just take a look in the book, in the magazine. You see what I'm talking about? There's the building in Philadelphia where they met with all of these delegates in May 25th. We're on May 25th. And look, there's a map of the different places. We've got New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland. And you can see from there was the Virginia plan said that the number of members of Congress from each state should be based on the state's population. Smaller states didn't like this. The Great Compromise provided a solution. It said every state would send 2 senators to the state. The number of members a state could send to the House of Representatives would be based on its state's population. You see, some of them thought it should, we have more, we should do this. We should have more representatives. Others said, no, we should all be equal. So because there are senators and House members, they were able to do both by having one way in the House and another way in the Senate of how states are represented. Here's the actual, writing from the articles there, taken from delegates, and they agreed upon what was done at the convention. And in actually, they did a draft first, and then it was ratified later. Which, by the way, that brings up another one. I had mentioned, who worked harder on this than anyone else? James Madison. And from France, Thomas Jefferson had sent him hundreds of books about government. Madison read them all. Before the convention, he drew up a list of the most important points to be covered. At the convention, he took detailed notes. Thanks to Madison, there was a written record of the meetings. And so we can thank James Madison for a lot of work done. So John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were absent. They were doing work in Europe, and different ones had different opinions on how this should be done. There's some more in this magazine. Should we ratify them or not? And it was voted upon to ratify the Constitution. There we have this. What is interesting is those who supported the Constitution, you know what they were called? They were called Federalists. Federalists, that's a good term for you to remember. Federal refers to the central government. They thought the country would do better with a stronger central government. And those who were opposed to this idea were called anti-federalists. Anti-federalists. And there were many reasons why people were against the Constitution. Some thought a central government wouldn't care about local issues. Some said it would overwhelm the states and take away the people's rights. Some feared the government would be taken over by the fewer and the great. Some said the president would have too much power. Some said the slavery clauses were immoral. The strongest argument against the document was it did not state the rights of the people. Didn't have a whole list, and so they needed to add some things there. So what do we have? We the people. We the people. There you see the handwriting. There, that famous pose has been done. What are rights? We're going to talk about. I have rights, I have rights. What are rights? And with rights comes responsibility. We all have a responsibility. And we also have something called a Supreme Court. What does a Supreme Court do? There are a lot of things here about that, or some things here about that, and how it works. We have the different branches of the government, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, which is what the Supreme Court would fall in with that, of the courts of the land. And let's put the Supreme in Supreme Court. And there we have it. Look, here we are again. In 1803, the Supreme Court heard the case of Marbury and Madison. In essence, it concerned Marbury's claim that he had been cheated out of his appointment as a federal judge. The court didn't rule on his claim. Rather, it ruled that the law under which the case was tried was unconstitutional. This was the first time the Supreme Court claimed the right of judicial review. And John Marshall, here we are, served as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court from 1801 until his death in 1835. And here's a Supreme Court justice there. And there are other court readings that you could read about in this magazine. Now this, and there's even in these magazines, there are word searches, and you can learn about things about our country. And again, with Discovery Kids, you can actually order these. This is an older issue of this, so I'm not sure if everything's current. But you can get your own copy of this by writing to Discovery Kids, P.O. Box 54206, Boulder, Colorado 80323-4206. And there you have it. Again, this issue of the Constitution, all about the Constitution with those famous words, we the people. Well, I hope that you learned something today from this issue. And again, if you're interested, you could get a copy of this and learn even more. Just gave you a few tidbits of what is contained within this magazine. And again, learn something new every day, and you take care.